Hey, what's going on, hockey fans? Welcome in to this edition of This Week at Flyers Hockey. I'm your host, James Scorza, with you. With me, as always, is my group, and with me, as always, is my group of companions on a basically like a little bit until like Olympics are done, and obviously no hockey until that's all said and done until I think it's Sunday. But joining me once again is Joey Marks. Austin Hammel will join us momentarily here, but Joey, it's good to see you, pal. How you doing?
It's good to be seen. It's been a great Valentine's Day weekend, celebrating President's Day. Had a really great interview with Jim Jackson, enjoying some good Olympic hockey. As one of the commentators said, it's the Canadians and U.S. are the ones fighting for who gets gold and who gets silver, and the rest of the countries are just fighting over who gets bronze.
Right, absolutely. And I think the other thing that's been the positive all weekend is that the Olympic break is basically. I think the other thing too had me got a chance to watch some different sports. Obviously, yesterday the Daytona 500. Yesterday, America's Greatest Race. The other then watching some NBA All Star games. Some Sixers stuff. Players did very well over the weekend. But obviously, the big storyline coming up later in around maybe 15, 20 minutes or so into our show, we'll have the privilege enough to recap our interview and our exclusive interview with Jim Jackson, who was on our Pazanaf Sports Show on Saturday, but we aired it on we pre-recorded it on Friday, but we aired it on Saturday. But if you didn't see it, you got to check it out. It's a great interview from all of us, from Joey, from myself, and also Austin. So great stuff like we always did, talking some all things Flyers pucks as he's on his Olympic break. But Joey, speaking of the Olympics, real quickly though, I don't want to make this like into a full-on conversation here, but obviously, Team USA over the week had some fair share of obstacles on that Saturday game. Jeremy Swayman looked like he was had a real struggle to his game now. But yesterday, the good news is that Connor Hellebuyck was the goaltender yesterday for Team USA and bounced back after an up and down kind of mood swing. But obviously, when I saw the Team USA struggling, I'm like thinking, kind of reminds you of your old school, like the Philadelphia Flyers of the 25-26 season to this point.
Yeah, a little bit. Like it gives you a perspective that in the game of hockey, the ice can tilt in any given direction at any given time, and how valuable it is to have a goaltender that is consistent in the net. And look, Connor Hellebuck is one of the premier goaltenders in the league right now. This is a guy that when he has an up and down game, you know and he has his struggles, you know that kind of means that the majority of goaltenders in the NHL right now are probably sharing in that up and down kind of season. And our guy Dan Vladar has been one of those guys from time to time, but he's been more consistent than inconsistent. And
Right.
but look, that was one of the things I said going into the Olympic break was going to be the Achilles heel of the U.S. Olympic team is can their goaltending be more consistent, because the offensive firepower was going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that really surprises me the most out of everything that happened over the weekend is that how they bounced back was like a very. I mean, it could. I mean, obviously, none of these games matter right now. Obviously, I think it starts later in the week that the medals are going to be more
Yeah.
significant because obviously it's going to be because obviously right after next week is literally when the next time we see you guys, the Olympics will already be over. So yeah, but I like I said, I was watching the game on Saturday, and it felt like the announcers were like, "Oh wow, they're probably really down." Like even though they were down 2-1, it felt like they were down 5-1. The way the announcers were trying to describe it with Kenny Albert, and kudos to Kenny Albert, Brian Boucher, and also Eddie Olczyk, who's doing an admirable job for this Olympic game in Milan. So yeah, I mean, to way you said it was I think the other thing that was really surprising was that how that the players and even it's like a lot of players a lot of people on Facebook were really pissed off about the way Jeremy Swayman was playing though. But yesterday I think it was a good bounce back win for them,
Yeah.
especially after a obstacle that could have gone in there, could have gone in basically. What was it? Denmark's favor in that game on Saturday.
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah, they got fortunate that Denmark faltered towards the end part of that game.
Right.
That was the key for the U.S. So here's my thing: is I look at the U.S. team as having all this offensive firepower and having a bit of chemistry too, because you're also talking about some people that are on that Olympic team that are either brothers. There's 2 sets of brothers on that team. There's a lot of team chemistry that's already on that team, teammates that are on that team. So you're looking at like a team like Denmark or Latvia that has some quality players here and there, but like you're not talking about like the elite of the elites, and like that's where I think I think the U.S. hockey team, it's like I said, the commentator said that it's Canada and U.S. are going to be fighting for who gets gold and who gets silver.
Right.
And the rest of the countries are fighting over who gets bronze. I think in that statement alone, it's pointing out that no matter if it's Latvia, Denmark, whoever it may be that goes against the U.S. or Canada, that they should handle them pretty handedly. And so against Denmark, when that wasn't the case early on in the game, I would assume it kind of was shocked a lot of people, because you don't expect them to trail in this unless they're playing each other. I mean, it's one of the reasons why a lot of people are saying that even though what's going on with the geopolitical situation with Russia and the Ukraine,
sure,
the thing is that people are saying, man, if the Russians were in this Olympics with the hockey team, boy, it would be a whole different ball game. Because now all of a sudden that field gets a little tighter of like where your line of error could be if you're the Team Canada or Team USA, especially if Russia's in there. So that is a big break. But at the same time, we've said this about the Flyers, James.
Yeah.
It's about you can say that you have the best team on paper, but when you get on the ice and you just take things for granted, you are perfectly susceptible to being smacked in the face by a team that doesn't belong in the same air space as you. But if you give them enough breathing room, they're going to take it. And Denmark almost did. And that's the part of Team USA that they have to be careful about moving forward in the tournament.
Absolutely. And, it's a very good point, though, when you brought up the Russian team, because you think about what's been going on with them, with what Putin's been doing, and it's been really sad what he's been trying to do with that war that's unbelievably sad, gonna admit.
Yes.
But to your point, though, if Russia was like there and you saw like Ovechkin and Malkin and like people like even like going back to like when the Russian team was like in like when the Russian team had like Mogilny, and also when they had Konstantinov and Kozlov, and like that same kind of feel too. But obviously it's different now because obviously what we just talked about here. But more than anything, I think the other thing too is that maybe this could be the one opportunity now to see finally Team USA. I mean, obviously, I think right now, we're going to be setting our calendars for on that Sunday on the 22nd. That'll be Team USA versus Canada for the gold medal. I mean, it's kind of like you paint the script here because and maybe the one that wins bronze will be either like Latvia or Sweden, or maybe like or even like Finland in that process too.
And like that's the thing is that matchup with the USA and Canada, that's going to be where it's going to be the championship. It's going to be the the Stanley Cup of some of these guys' career, because USA hasn't brought home gold in men's hockey in quite some time.
46 years.
Yeah.
Actually, funny fact is, I don't mean to change the subject here, but 46 years on the date on Sunday will be the 46-year anniversary of them winning their last gold medal.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong. That would mean what? The miracle,
Miracle on
miracle.
ice. Yep, absolutely,
So
absolutely, brother.
you got to think like that's the last time USA won gold medal. In the Olympics. This is a part, especially with saying that Russia's got it has kind of opened the door,
Hmm.
for Team USA to do that. And the only team that stands in their way has been in their way for a lot of different past Olympics, whether it's the Russians or Team Canada. With those two tend to be in our way a lot in the Olympics and in our way to get a gold medal.
Hmm.
So the
It's
leading up
true.
to that game against Team Canada on Sunday, they have to string together some consistent play. They
Yep.
can't take anybody for granted. Plus, they need to start to gain momentum
Right.
because maybe Team Canada comes in and goes, "Okay, it's a big game, but okay, do they out firepower us?" And look, Brian Boucher, who I trust his analysis, has said that even for a guy who, you know, loosely roots for Team Canada,
Hmm.
like this is a guy who said, "Yeah, I'm not so sure we have the strongest team this year."
Hmm.
And so for him to say that in a very analytical way, like speaking about the goaltending for Team Canada, look, that's one of the reasons why I say with Connor Hellebuck and Swayman, you got to work in the system that you have in front of you.
Right.
And with Team Canada, if they're vulnerable at goaltending, you got to make sure that your goaltending's tight because
Absolutely.
because you're gonna have the firepower, you're gonna have the offense, but can you keep enough pucks out of your net? That's the difference. Because Team Canada is gonna have some firepower too.
Yeah. And the last point we'll say here too before we share you guys our exclusive interview with JJ here. Um, yeah, I think that's a very good point because you think about what Bush actually said over the week is that yeah, this team could actually easily be like the goaltending situation is kind of been a struggle for them. Obviously, I mean, other than Swayman's the one that's been having its fair share of obstacles this
Yeah,
Olympic, but Hellebuck's been standing tall, most importantly. But I think the other thing too is that I think if they win this gold medal on Sunday, it will be like the Kachuk brothers. It would be Jack Hughes. It will be like there will be a lot of like you said, this will be their like Stanley Cup like esque a little bit.
yeah.
It's because obviously like winning a gold medal for them will be just as close to them winning a Stanley Cup, and I think you nailed that on the head right there too, Joe.
Yeah, I honestly think that the fact that this team it's one of the more star-studded U.S. teams in a while.
Absolutely.
And that is a part of the reason why there's so much hype for the U.S. to be able to take home the gold.
Hmm.
And you got to just hope that in some regards they just don't take it lightly, and then they stay on their game. And I would love to see the gold medal come home to the USA. I also been keeping an eye on the women's U.S. hockey team.
Hmm.
They're just straight killing it, and
Yeah.
it's like for me, it's the women are out dueling what the men's hockey, especially U.S. hockey, has brought to the table. So right now, in my mind, the men's U.S. hockey team has to catch up to the women's U.S. hockey team.
For sure, absolutely. So, obviously, over the week, last week, hard to believe it's been a week since we had this interview
Yeah,
aired it, but it's been actually no, it's been 2 weeks. Hard to believe the last time we checked here, but obviously, in case you haven't seen it already, over the Past and Half Sports Show on Saturday. We had the privilege enough to join by the Flyers play-by-play voice for NBC Sports Philadelphia and Jim Jackson, and he talked about all the things that the Flyers need to do here. So here, especially more so if you didn't see the interview on Saturday, if you were sleeping or you were doing some stuff for Valentine's Day, here is our exclusive interview with Flyers play-by-play voice Jim Jackson, and it's definitely a must-see. So here's what we did on the last 2 weeks ago when this aired with Jim Jackson. So please enjoy it. Hello, everybody. Welcome in to this edition of the Pass and Nav Sports Show. Today, we got a special guest join us here on our airways for the second time of the Pass and Nav family. He is the play-by-play voice of the Philadelphia Flyers for the last 30-plus years or so and does an excellent job all season long, along with Brian Boucher, Scott Hardnell, and Ashwin Sullivan and Al Morgini for NBC Sports Philadelphia. He is no one other than Jim Jackson. It's good to see you, JJ. How are you, sir?
Great, guys. How are you?
Doing good. Doing really good.
What's happening, JJ? It's good to talk to you, especially with the Olympic break coming up and the first half of the Flyers season. We talked prior to the draft. It's good to kind of get a update from the firsthand knowledge.
Well, we'll update. I wish we were updating about 2 weeks ago. I was a lot more upbeat at that point. But
I agree.
Absolutely. So
2 weeks ago, just realized this is what Friday, whatever. It was the Monday. So that's what, from when we're recording this, about 10 days ago. The Flyers were playing the Islanders at home. If they had won that game in regulation, they would have been in third place in the Metro. They would have been tied with the Islanders with 2 games in hand. And now here we are that little time later, and they are behind several teams and 8 points back in both the wild card and the division. I mean, that's how fast it can change. I guess the good news for the Flyers is it can also change the other way pretty quickly, but they now are going to rely on the Islanders or the Penguins to falter, I think, or a couple of teams in the wild card race would have to falter, but they need at least the Islanders or Penguins to really falter down the stretch. But the Flyers, they have to win, and that has been the problem for them. They have not been able to win more than 3 games in a row all year. They've only done that twice. So if they don't start figuring out how to stack together wins, they're not going to be able to get back into the race.
Absolutely. All right. So
kick us off.
What's that?
I said, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, absolutely. So obviously, we'll begin this question here today. So obviously, the 2026 new year hasn't been pretty for the Flyers, and you think about what our needs are, especially what they need to do in the second half of their season. But right now, so what do you think the Flyers need to do to get back on track here after this? Like you mentioned, this last month or so has been a real struggle for them, but how can they get back on track and try to get victories together, even though this was probably their worst stretch of the season to this point?
There's no doubt they hit the halfway point, 41 game mark of their season.
Sorry about that.
No, it wasn't me this time. All right, good. I mean, they hit the 41 game mark of the season. I believe with the game against Anaheim at home, they won that game, and they were sitting at that point 6th in the entire NHL in points percentage. So the first half was good. I mean, Dan Vladar came in. Dan Vladar gave them the kind of goaltending they've been looking for. Trevor Zegras had given them the kind of spark offensively they needed. Power play was still struggling, but the bottom line is they were right there. They were where they wanted to be. And, when they extended Christian Dvorak, who was also a big part of the first half, I think that was the thinking. Hey, this team has shown us that they are a playoff contender, so we're going to look to secure the roster and maybe even add to it. And then in those 2 weeks since the halfway point, we've discussed this, it's now more than 2 weeks, it's a month since the halfway point, but in that stretch, they have fallen well back, and things don't look the same. So how do you get back to what you're doing in the first half? Well, there's not that much that's different. They were a slow starting team through the first half too, not getting off to great starts consistently in games. They really do need to adjust that. You can't wade into a game. You have to come out and take charge, especially at home early in the game. And they have not been a good team at doing that all year. They were able to overcome that with 15 come from behind wins in the first half. They haven't had any come from behind wins in the second half. And in general, in the NHL, as things tighten up into the second half of the year, coming from behind to win games becomes that much more difficult. So down the stretch, 26 games to go, they absolutely have to figure out their poor starts in games. So that would be number one. Number two would be to shore up defensively. When they really hit the slump, the defense really leaked, and they were giving up a lot of backdoor goals, east-west goals, which really bothers Rick Tocchet, their head coach. It's one of his things really wants to shut down on, and they had done a good job on early in the season. So we know it's in there. If they can do that, they can play hockey where they're not giving up those backdoor goals, those east-west goals where the goalies have very little chance. So I think they can get back to that. That they have a blueprint for. They've done it. The good starts they haven't done all year, so we'll see about that. And then they have to continue to get great goaltending from Vladar. I'm pretty confident that will happen. It would be nice if they can get Sam Ersson or whoever ends up being the backup if they go a different route to give him some support, because it just hasn't been there. Their save percentage as a team is down near the bottom, even though Vladar is having a very good year. So, you do the math there. And if those things come together, Zegras has to get back to where he was in the first half, where you notice him, he's creating Konechny's flying now. I think Owen Tippett is playing the best hockey of his career right now. So there are some players going right now, but they just need a couple more of them. And again, back to the original point, better starts in games. Can't chase the game. Have the other team chase you a little bit, and you'll see the wins will start piling up. But in order to put wins together, as we discussed earlier, which they will have to do, you are going to have to be playing from in front. You can't constantly be coming from behind. The odd come from behind win, sure. And does it show you something? Absolutely. Did those 15 come from behind wins early in the year show you something about this team? Yeah, they don't give up. They're resilient. They battle. But in general, especially as the season gets toward the finish line, teams shut things down. They clamp down, and it's much tougher to come from behind and win games. So better starts would be a great start for the Flyers in their final 26 games.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Joe?
You mentioned JJ, a couple of the players like Owen Tippett, Travis Konechny. One of the things that we've talked about, all of us have talked about, is some of the play from some of the younger talent, the Devin Barkys and the Carl Grundstroms. My thing is, do you see the surge of some of this youthful talent that's coming up, maybe unexpected youthful talent that's coming up through the ranks? Do you see them helping this team in the home stretch, kind of help them offensively where it's necessary?
Yeah, Denver Barky's been great. I did not expect to see Denver Barky with the Flyers this year. I thought he was going to get a full year in the AHL. But, the players announced when they're ready. There were a couple injuries at the time he came up, and he took advantage of an opportunity. He's shown the coaching staff that he has obviously NHL-level IQ. He has NHL-level determination, skill, but the size is always going to be the thing he's going to have to overcome, and he does that with intelligence and with grit. So Denver's been great. The Flyers have to have their young players pop. Alex Pump, we haven't seen yet. He has injury issues down in the AHL. If they can get him healthy, maybe they get a look at him down the stretch. Porter Martone's college season will end at some point. If they go all the way to the Frozen Four, there won't be a whole lot left to get him into some games if he does begin his entry-level contract. But he's coming eventually, whether it's this year or next. He looks like he's going to be a really good player. And obviously, Michkov still only 21. You have young players that are here that they are the cornerstone of the rebuild. The veterans are supposed to help them along, and I think that certainly is happening. But to determine whether the rebuild is working, you have to look at the young players. Tyson Forster was clearly taking another step. Unfortunate injury there, a huge injury, because he's probably their best all-around forward in terms of 200-foot game, ability to score. Just everything in his game was good. So that's been a big loss, but he's still part, certainly, of the young foundation of this team. So they have that. The one thing I will say is every guy I've just mentioned, there's one similarity, right? They all are wingers. So a lot of their young players, young studs, and veterans, if you talk about Tippett and Konechny, are Bobby Brink. They're veterans. I'm sorry, they're wingers. So the Flyers have a surplus of good wingers. You really can, you only play, obviously, in one game, you play 8 wingers. And you probably can deal with 2 of those being penalty killer grinders on the fourth line. So you have basically 6 top 9 wingers. And with Forster healthy, Martone here, the Flyers are beyond that. So that would mean a surplus. That would mean the Flyers might have to make a move from that surplus to maybe add a center, because the Flyers are thin at center, or on D if they feel as though they have a need there, or goaltender for whatever. But you have to take from your surplus to add to where you aren't quite as strong. So that would be, I think, where the Flyers go if they are making some kind of move before the deadline or even into the summer, because they do have, when you look at the Flyers wingers, they stack up with a lot of teams. I mean, they have a lot of quality there. So, and a lot of them are young. So back to your original point, those young players do have to take that next step, and some are for sure with this team.
Yeah, when we talked the last time, you brought up again about the center position, and when we were talking before the draft, you were saying that your the draft was not going to possibly pan out where we were going to get a bunch of centers, but that the Flyers desperately needed some. So the idea that they still need I think that you're right. Like that could be something that they target in the trade deadline, along with a potential backup goaltender. Austin, do you have a question for JJ?
Yeah. Actually, you sort of touched on it a little bit. A lot of the youthful guys, that whole thing from during the Flyers Carnival, Rick Tocchet showing a bit of frustration with the media again over being asked about the Michkov thing. Do you think some of that in some way is starting to bleed into the on ice performance of this team? It seems like before a lot of this came around, they were playing some incredible hockey, and now as this is starting to like bubble over again here in the past like week and some change, it seems like it's starting to maybe affect the on ice product. Do you think that's a possible thing?
Not at all. No, they were this whole Michkov thing's been going on all year, and the record was fine when it was out there. People love when the team takes a downturn to find a reason. What's the reason why it's going this way? And a lot of times they try to find a reason beyond what they're seeing on the ice, like some kind of problem in the room or what have you. I just think that basically their problem has been some things they did in the first half. Again, those slow starts, not getting quality goaltending from anyone but Vladar. Those things started to come to roost. And also they lost Forster. That's a big loss. So you throw all these things together. That's probably what's doing it. The game changes as the year goes along in the NHL, and the Flyers have to adjust to that. I'm around the team all the time, travel with the team. I don't see any of this angst. I think a lot of it's on social media. I was a little surprised the Flyers even addressed it. But the bottom line is there's a whole bunch of fandom that thinks Matvei Michkov's ice time is the reason the Flyers aren't winning, and that's just not the problem. Should he be playing more? I'm not the person who makes that decision. I will tell you, he takes short shifts. He's never going to be a penalty killer, and he's probably not going to be a guy you're going to have on the ice when you're protecting a 1-goal lead. He's not a defensive player. So I don't know as if he's ever going to be a 20-minute guy as a forward, as a winger. Especially if he takes short shifts himself, which he does. And some of that comes back to the conditioning, and that's that whole thing. But, maybe if he's in better condition, he takes longer shifts. You're going to see, obviously, his minutes go up. But that whole thing has been an issue. It's been talked about. It's been bandied about from back in really since November. And through November, December, they stayed right in the top 10 of the NHL points percentage. So I do not think that has anything to do with the problems they had in January. Do I think it's an issue? Obviously, it's an issue. Everyone's talking about it. The Flyers talked about it. Danny Briere did a quick press conference about it. So it's absolutely – I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It's an issue. Do I think that's the reason the Flyers went whatever their record was, 3-8-4, whatever it was, into the break? I don't think that that has much to do with it at all. And I do think that other issues that we already discussed have a lot more to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, JJ, the trade deadline is looming on March 6th, excuse me. So it feels like the Flyers are just basically their season is not going the way we expected or hoped here. So partially, who do you think is responsible for some of these struggles? Is it Rick Tocchet? Is it Danny Briere? Or is it Keith Jones to this point?
I mean, it's everybody. You win together, you lose together. I just explained why I think it happened. And that's where I'll go with it. I mean, as a team, it hasn't been Cam York gets off the bad starts. It hasn't been Sean Couturier gets off the bad starts. The entire team gets off to slow starts in games, except for Dan Vladar, who usually keeps them in the game early. And then they've been able early in the year to come back and win some of those games. And here later, they haven't been able to win some. They did get a point against Ottawa because he held them in the game early. And, so they've used that to get some points, but they haven't been able to win like they were early in the year in those come from behind fashion. So the big picture, you obviously have to look at who's building the team. But Danny Briere, Keith Jones, Dan Hilferty, they've said from day one, this is a long-term rebuild. There was no guarantee they were going to make the playoffs this year. We all got excited. I got excited. Hey, they were 6th in the league in points percentage, the halfway point. That's pretty darn good. I mean, 6th in the league, that would get you at least into the second round of the playoffs. I mean, saying that you're playing to your points, at least into the second round, maybe even in, if you could maybe even sneak into the third round. So I think that when you look at this team, that again, they're wing heavy, so they're probably going to have to make some moves to help some of the other areas of the team. They're not easy to make. The landscape has kind of changed. There were a whole bunch of great centers that were going to be available in free agency. They're gone. And I'm talking about elite centers, right? And they're gone. So that avenue is gone because the salary cap's gone up and teams are just re-signing their players like crazy. So free agency is not going to be the be-all, end-all anymore to really finish off your team's roster as you make that next step because there just aren't going to be players there. That's the way it looks to me. So that means you have two other options. You have to build through the draft, which you always have to do. You have to build a foundation through the draft, and you're going to have to make some trades. And Danny's shown the capability of making some really good trades. The Provorov trade brought them a lot. The Lawton trade got him a first and Grabankin. So the Zegras trade was a trade in which they got a quality player for a fourth-line player and a second-round pick. So, I mean, I think that when you look at how this all breaks down, those are the kind of trades they're going to probably have to make. They're going to have to find a player who's underperforming for another team that has the potential to get back to where they were or maybe just get back to where people thought they might be as a player. Those are risky, but the Washington Capitals made about 4 of those deals before last season, bringing in Jacob Chychrun and Pierre-Luc Dubois and all that, and it worked. Those players all really liked Washington. That team took off, went to the second round of the playoffs. So it can be done. Boston went out and traded Brandon Carlo for Fraser Minten and a first-round pick. Fraser Minten's now one of their top. He's with Zach, some of their guys injured. He's playing in their top lines as a center, and he looks really good. So you have to make those kind of trades, and that's what I think Danny's looking for. And he's shown already he's capable of making those trades, but they don't happen every day. And you have to work a long time. And now that we're in a roster freeze during the Olympic break, I think GMs can, talk about a lot of things and then be ready to pounce when that freeze is lifted. And then you're not going to have much time between that and, as you mentioned, the trade deadline. So that's when it's all going to go to work. But casting blame for their month swoon is, I mean, it's everybody. It's a team-wide thing. I mean, I don't think you can put Dan Vladar in there, but pretty much everybody else has had a problem. I mean, Travis Konecny's piling up the points. Pretty tough to get mad at him. And as I said before, I think Owen Tipp is playing the best hockey of his career, all-around hockey. So those 3 I might take out of it, but almost everybody else has contributed to a slump. And it's going to take a group effort to get out of it.
Absolutely. So do you think there are going to be buyers and sellers at the trade deadline?
That's the question. And as I alluded to earlier, I was just getting to this point. I might have sidetracked myself, but Danny Briere, Dan Hilferty, Keith Jones have said from day one, the players will tell them what to do. And that's the rub this year, because I know that Danny was hoping this would be the year that they might add. And I'm not talking about adding a 35-year-old player at the end of a contract or something like that, but adding players to the mix. And I think Christian Dvorak counts as an ad, actually, but other players to the mix as they try to climb to another level, namely make the playoffs. And certainly through the first half of the season, everything looked like that was going to happen. So as you're sitting there now and you're Keith Jones, Danny Briere, Dan Hilferty, Rick Tocchet, you're looking at this team and you're saying, okay, so what are they telling us? Through 41 games of the season, they're telling us they're absolutely a playoff contender. We should add to this mix and try to help them. And then through the last 15 games or so, not so much. So that's the question they have. Which which do they go with? Do they go with a team that looked like a promising club early, or do they look at this team that's really struggling right now? And I say really struggling. They're struggling in games they knew going into that Ottawa game before the break. That's a huge game, and they came out and there wasn't much energy. So there are concerns as to how good this team is. Should you add to it? The other caveat to buyer seller is, what do they have to sell? They have a lot of no trade, no move deals. Rasmus Ristolainen is a name that's garnered some interest from other teams, but he's got injury issues that could decrease his value. What do they really have to sell if they want to become sellers?
Sure.
So I think it might more be, James, to the point where they are looking to make hockey trades where they add, but they may be willing to trade core pieces. They may be willing to trade some of the players that have been here a while, or some of the players that I wouldn't. Owen Tippett right now, to trade him would be tough. He's playing so well, but he might be a guy that has a lot of value in the market. So who knows what? But I think that might be what they're looking at, as opposed to like just trading a player for a couple draft picks. I do think that if someone offers first round picks for some of their players, they'll still make that deal. But I do think that they're kind of looking for a mix now to maybe add and change the makeup a little bit of the team to try to spur them to another level too. So I think we're in a little bit of a different spot than we've been the last couple of years, where they were outright sellers. But this last 2, 3, 4 week spell does give you reason to pause as to how much are you going to add and how much you're going to give away. And so it's a really interesting time. I know they'll go through this break and they have time now. Nobody can make any moves to explore and to also examine the team, because where exactly are they in this rebuild? We don't really know. I mean, through 41 games, it looked like they're on the rise. They're taking the step. To the last 15, no. So that's a question they have to answer. That's why they're paid the big bucks. They got to answer that question and make the move from there.
You know, JJ, you mentioned earlier a couple of the bright spots, Dan Vladar being one of them. You also mentioned about acquiring a talent that may be struggling on one team and could thrive on this team. And I feel like Dan Vladar was not a household name until he came to the Flyers. I felt like he really has shined through in the goal. If we're talking about this Flyers team potentially still making a strong playoff push and getting into the playoffs, what is your confidence level with, if we were to keep Sam Ersson, what is your confidence level with this tandem of Vladar and Ersson in the net, especially going into the playoffs?
I mean, I'm very confident in Dan Vladar. If he were fading now, he could wear out a little bit. He's not getting a break. He's playing, obviously, in the Olympics, and he's never played. He's already passed his career high in starts for years. So the wear down factor is a true concern for Vladar. As for the backup, I mean, I've always been a Sam Ersson guy. He just hasn't played well this year. I mean, I think he'd be the first to tell you that. I thought early on his numbers were worse than his performance. But then I think as we went through December and January a little bit, the numbers were kind of pretty symbolic of his performance, and they aren't that good. So, how long do the Flyers want to keep trying with Sam is really the question that I would throw back at you. If they really feel like he deserves this full year to try to get his game together, then it's going to be Sam getting those starts when Vladar can't. And they have the option of going with Alexei Kolosov and giving him a run. They also have the option of making a trade and getting a veteran goaltender to come in as the backup. So that's what they could do. Where they go with it, I don't know. I'm not sure what's in their heads as far as Sam goes. That's really the starting point, because obviously if they feel as though Sam still, when he gets healthy, and I think he should be able to get healthy through this break, is still deserving of a chance to be at least the backup to Vladar, then all these other questions go out the window. It'll just be Sam. But if the answer to that question is, he's had his chance and hasn't proven himself, they're going to go in one of those other two directions. And I'm not sure which one would be the case. I'm not, first of all, sure which veteran goaltenders are available out there, if they're any better than what Sam is, or whether Kolosov is ready. So those are all the questions. I answered your question with a bunch of questions, but that's really that's really where we're at with that. And the biggest concern is that Vladar goes through those Olympics healthy and it comes back and still has energy to play a lot of hockey here over the last 26 games.
Yeah, like for me with Sam Ersson, the confidence level has always been low, but the peak of me saying, okay, maybe he's more than a serviceable backup was that Colorado game. I think that Colorado game was his best of the season by far. So, for me, having this tandem potentially going into the playoffs, again, I'm with you. I don't know what veteran goaltender are out there for a trade. I would be open to that because I brought up to James before the show about the Boucher-Layton back in a couple years ago, where
like 16.
Yes.
Or the boy.
Time flies, I tell you.
Yeah. So, having that tandem, a strong tandem of goaltenders going into the playoff can almost boost your team in striving through the rounds in the playoffs. That's why I was asking about that.
Yeah, it used to be you'd settle on one guy, and we've still seen with Sergei Bobrovsky and Andrei Vasilevsky, we've seen one goalie carry teams recently, but we've also seen Vegas change goalies in the middle of a playoff run and win a cup. So it can go both ways. I don't think it's as hard and fast anymore that it has to be one guy. I agree with you. Tandem can help. Really what it comes down to is just performance. I mean, and on Sam, I will tell you that more than the game in Colorado, which was a very good game for him, I go back to years past where he had stretches of month to month and a half where he was the guy, and he played really well. In fact, there was a stretch, is it last year or 2 years ago, where he went about a 16 game stretch where his save percentage was in the 920, 930 range. So, I mean, he's capable of being better than he's been this year. And so that's why I think the guys keep what's that?
He's shown those flashes.
Yeah,
and
that's not over a whole season at all. No, for sure. But as a backup, he's certainly shown that he has enough to be a backup. Not this year, but in years past. So we'll see. I mean, again, I'm not sure where their head is at with Sam. That really is the answer to the original question as to what direction they go. Whether they go out and get a veteran goalie, do they think with where the team is in the standings right now, it's worth going out and getting a veteran goalie? Because again, they're 8 points back in both races. They do have games in hand, but it's going to take a really good run to leapfrog 4 or 5 teams to get into the playoffs. So they have to make that determination above all else in terms of what they're going to do with the trade deadline. Because if they feel as though they are out of it, that changes their mindset, as they've said all along. And they go back to my original point: the team tells you what to do, and if they feel the team has told them what to do here over this last month, then that would mean they're going to be looking to add assets and sell what they can sell.
Austin, you have a question for JJ?
Yeah. You actually you sort of touched a little bit on it, talking about Ristolainen. With the way the blue line's been playing, do you think an addition might be necessary to help sort of bolster that with the way the play has been the last 15 games?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really put it all on the defense. Some of it was poor back checking from the forward. Some of it wasn't great goaltending. Vladar was out for a big part of that stretch. The defense is a interesting setup because Travis Sanheim was playing the right side a lot with Cam York last year and this year. Now, in order for Ristolainen to play higher in the lineup, they have to move Sanheim to the left, and that means Andre comes out of the lineup because he's a lefty. So he's a young defenseman I'd like to see more of. He was scratched, I believe, the last 5 before the break, maybe 5 or 6.
I believe it was 5.
Yeah, and I mean, Noah Julesen's a serviceable veteran, but I mean, I know what he is. I think the Flyers know what he is. So I would like to see Andre. I would like to see maybe Hunter McDonald get some games. I'd like too bad Ty Murchison got hurt. I would have liked to see him get more games. I might even like to see Christian Kairou get some games. Since they acquired him, he's really torn it up with the Phantoms. He's an all-star now. He's replacing Barky. He's the all-star with that team. He's a smaller defenseman again, but he's a puck mover. Maybe they give him a shot. I'm watching as prepare for these games and I go through the rosters of these other teams, there's guys all over the place that are not high picks, that are guys who bounce around the minors who suddenly it hits. And, these are Bobby McMahon, for instance, with Toronto is suddenly a hot commodity. I mean, these are not all players are your first overall picks. So, I think maybe some of those guys have to get a shot. So we'll see. But making a trade for D is I think a priority. I think the biggest priority, to be honest with you, though, is the center, because I just think they feel they're so thin down the middle. And if you look at their production from the center position over the last 2 months, goal wise, slim pick. I think Rodrigo Abels is your goal scoring leader for the Senators, or close to it. He and Dvorak are right there. Not getting much from Noah Cates in terms of goals, or Sean Couturier. They know. Danny said it a million times that they're thin at center. So that I think would be the priority over D. But not to say they won't try to strengthen the D as well. But they also have, some young D, Oliver Bonks coming, and I mentioned Hunter McDonald and some of the others. So they do have some young. They don't the young centers they have, Berglund, Luchenko, Nesbitt, are years away probably. At least Nesbitt is years away, and Luchenko maybe next year. But I mean, he's bounced all over the place here over the last 2 years. I think they want to settle him in. Maybe some time in the AHL next year will be good for him. We'll see. Berglund he really was good in the World Juniors, and it'll be interesting to see. But these are really young guys. I don't think they're counting on these guys to come in and be the heroes, and be the number one center. So I think that's probably where they are looking to add, even more than on D. But not to say they're ignoring defense. I get your point. They aren't stockpiled. They do not have that elite number one superstar defenseman. They have solid players. I mean, Travis Sanheim, Cam York, these are solid players. Jamie Drysdale's making tremendous strides. Ristolainen has a role. Nick Seeler, he's good on any team. He can fit any kind of role. We want to see what we have in Andre. So there are things to like on D, but I don't think I'm saying anything out of turn here to say they don't have that elite number one defenseman, but good luck finding him. I mean, Quinn Hughes might have been him, and maybe in a couple of years will be again if he hits the free agent market. But I mean, it's just hard to find those guys. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So during the recent last few games or so, they have some coverage and weak side gaps having lead into multiple goals, draining momentum. So obviously, I think Brian Boucher nailed it on the head that the Flyers need in the minds of a reset here. So what are some gaps that you think that the Flyers can improve to try to get back that reset that they had earlier in the season?
Well, you just mentioned it. I mean, the biggest change from the early season to me was the leaky defense on the backside goals. And that's not defensemen a lot of the time. That's forwards. So, a defenseman to some degree if they completely break down. But, if you get to the cross-ice passes, you're usually talking about out high. So it's probably more a forward issue, coming back, staying with your winger, that kind of thing. Yes, sometimes the defensemen do get caught sleeping when a guy's right there on the post and just standing there all by himself. That's happened a couple times too. But when it's on the move, usually that's, you got to have that back pressure from the forward. So I think that's something, because if you look at the first 41 and then compare it to the last 15 or 16, and you look at changes, like I told you, they were falling behind in the first half. That didn't change. They were falling behind, but they were coming back. In the last 15, they were falling behind and they weren't able to make it back. That's a change I'd like to make from the very beginning of the season. Start games better. Be ready at the start. But as far as the backdoor goals, that's kind of a recent development that has really hurt them. And that's, again, as I said earlier, the good news is they showed us for a good long stretch, 30, 40 games, that they can prevent those on a consistent basis. So they just have to get back to that. So that would be absolutely a big one. We already talked about getting maybe more stops from anybody not named Dan Vladar, and that certainly would help as well. The power play has been showing at least some signs of getting better. I think Drysdale's slowly but surely getting his bearings as a power play quarterback. Still want to see more from Michkov on the power play. And And, Zegras, I thought early in the year looked like a dynamic power play performer. He's kind of faded into the woodwork a little bit in terms of that. I thought in the couple games right before the break, we were starting to see it again. So it might just be confidence. Who knows what it is, but those guys those are the skill guys. They have to excel when you have the power play, and they got to be better right around the net. Net front presence, tips, garbage goals, getting those rebounds. I'm sounding like a coach now, but those are where goals are scored. So they got to be good around it. Tyson Forster was really good in that area. They miss him dearly in that area, but there's got to be other guys who can step up and be that guy, the hound around the neck, the guy who screens the goalie, the guy who makes the tips. Got to have those guys on the power play and at full strength.
Yeah, I feel like James and Joe. That's something. I feel like that's something that I've mentioned quite a bit since the Forster injury. Is that we're seeing these crazy scrums for a loose puck in front of the net, and next thing you know, it's off in the corner, and the play starting to transition back the other way. And it's tough to watch because, like you said, Jim, Tyson Forster would clean that stuff up all the time, and not having that net front presence when a puck is loose like that can end up being a backbreaker sometimes. Yeah,
there's no doubt. There were a couple in the last game before the break where I remember rebounds being left. James Reimer, who played in that game, didn't face many shots, but he's an older guy who just got signed. He's not that sharp, so some pucks were left out front, and they were there. And even in the call, I'd say rebound and cleared. So the pucks are there. You got to get them. Not all goals are going to be beautiful 2-on-1s. Big slap shots, from the slot. There, a lot of them are going to be those tips and those rebounds and ugly goals, and you definitely have to get those if you're going to have a consistent offensive attack.
So speaking of goals and an offensive attacks, the Flyers have what I would consider a bit of a balanced scoring roster. They don't have like a star that is scoring 30 goals, 35 goals at this point. They have a very balanced scoring regiment on their roster. So, JJ, my question to you is, it's kind of a two-parter. With this team going into the trade deadline, does this team need to trade for a kind of superstar player, someone that could potentially score 30, 35 goals or more in a season to, kind of bolster, or can they strive and succeed with this balanced scoring output from this team? And the next part of that question is, regardless of which direction they go, if making the playoffs this year, would that be, in Danny Briere's and Keith Jones's mind, a bigger step forward, like ahead of schedule kind of step forward in the rebuild process?
That's a lot, Joe. Let me think if I can remember all of this. Okay, so the first question, trading for a superstar is tough. Nobody wants to give a superstar away. So, you usually will develop a superstar or get one via free agency, like, Mitch Marner went to Vegas. But that kind of avenue is starting to close, as we talked about earlier, with signing their free agents before they hit the market. So the free agent getting a superstar, maybe Austin Matthews in a couple of years, Connor McDavid in a couple of years. Are they going to make it to the market? I have serious doubts. So you can't sit and wait and hope for that. So your next option is to trade for one. And who's trading a superstar, as I said earlier? Not many teams. Now, you do have St. Louis saying Robert Thomas might be available now. Is he a superstar? Maybe not, but he's an absolute number one center. And that's something the Flyers have a need for. So I'm sure Danny Briere has at least explored that. So there is that option. To answer your question, can they win? Can they make the playoffs without a superstar? Well, Travis Konecny's pretty close to one. He's got it. He's in the top 10 in points over the last 2 months in the NHL. He always has at least one stretch like that. He's on pace for his fourth straight career high in points. He's a really high level NHL player. Owen Tippett is always teasing us and looking like it. I think he's kind of arrived to that. It's going to take a little while for it to show up in the numbers maybe, but the way he's playing is really impressive. So they have some guys that are close to that. They also think Porter Martone is going to be a heck of a player. Matvei Michkov perhaps he's not having a great year. We understand that, but he has the skill level to maybe be one of those players. So they have some guys on the roster that could develop into that or are very close to it as it is. When the Flyers had 6 or 7 players, I believe it was 7, maybe 8 players hit the 10-goal mark. They were leading the league in 10-goal scores. So they had the balance, and that's, having 8 guys or whatever with 10 goals without being a high-scoring team. So there's clearly balance, and you can win with that. You probably do need a superstar too to come from somewhere in order to win the cup. I can go back. You go back over the last 15 cup winners. Pretty much every one of them had a guy that was a first-team All-Star or at least close to that. So you're going to need that. But funny thing is, when the team starts playing better, everybody's numbers look better, and every individual starts to look a little bit better. So it's a funny thing about the sport of hockey. As you win more, your plus minus goes way up, your goal totals go up, you get empty net goals, your goal totals go way up, point totals. Everything starts to look better when you win. So and then all of a sudden, players who were thought of as really good players are talked about as, man, they're great players. So and Travis Konechny made the Four Nations team last year. Some people were saying, wow, he's now finally part of the elite in the NHL. Now he didn't make the Olympic team this year, but Travis Sanheim was considered maybe a second pair defenseman, and then he got a chance in the Four Nations and showed what he could do, and people think of him now as a legitimate top pair defenseman. So our perceptions of these guys change, and that's what would happen if these guys got better as a team. I personally think Tyson Forster has the potential, and injuries are a concern because he's had several of them now. But if he stays healthy, has potential to be one of the best two-way forwards in the league. So I'm not saying he's going to score 50 goals, but he could score 35, 40, and also be your best defensive forward. Those do not grow on trees. Mark Stone type players, they make teams better in a big way. And believe me, the coaches treat them as superstars. So that's to answer your question on the superstar end of it. Trading for one is tough because they just aren't offered. You have to develop them, whether it be through the draft or through a player you trade for that, like a Trevor Zegras, who might develop into that again and once was. That's the other way to do that. As for the playoffs this year and what it would mean, it's going to be tough. Let's face it. They're 8 points back in both races with 26 to play. Games in hand, if they win those, they're only 4 back in the division, 6 points back in the wild card. Makes it sound a little bit more doable. It's doable. They have to play about 667 points percentage hockey the rest of the way, which sounds high, but that's close to what they were doing when they were 6th in the league. They were over 600 at least. And if the East calms down a little bit, the East has been destroying the West this year. It's like plus 40 in interconference, 40 wins more for the East than the West. That's a lot of points being put into the East. And that's why making the playoffs in the East is probably going to take high 90s. So that's going to be tough. But if the East slows down a little bit down the stretch, maybe that drops to 95, getting into the playoffs at 95, and the Flyers could get there.
Right.
Yeah. But what was it? But your question was, what does it mean? If they make the playoffs, is the rebuild ahead of schedule? No, it is not. If they miss the playoffs, is it behind schedule? No. The sign of it being behind schedule is when the young players are developing. That's why Michkov's getting so much focus. He has not taken another step this year. He's regressed, actually, to some degree. You can't get around that. His numbers are showing you that there's regression there. So that's where the concern is. You're seeing development with some players. You aren't saying with Matt Fay this year for whatever reason. I know the people out there all think it's the coach, but it's just simply not that simple, and to be redundant. And but you look at Connor Bedard in his second year. He was getting destroyed publicly because he didn't look good. He didn't look comfortable. He didn't look confident. Wasn't putting the numbers up. The sophomore slump is real. It happens, and the Flyers have to hope that Matt Fay gets into really good shape in the offseason, is ready when camp rolls around next year, is stronger in his lower base so he can fight checks off and be just a little quicker. He's never going to be fast, but he can be quicker. And then he's got unbelievable vision. He's got out of this world vision on the ice, creativity. There's a lot to like about Matt Michkov. So he could be, as we were talking earlier, one of those guys who develops into an elite kind of player, but he's got work to do. There's no question about it. But you judge the rebuild by how these young players are developing. And if they are developing and enough of them are getting better, you're going to make the playoffs, So that's going to happen. Are they there yet? If you had asked me this question 3 weeks ago, I would have said, yeah, I think they are. And right now, it's tough. It's going to be tough in the East to make the playoffs.
Yeah,
Austin,
absolutely.
I'm gonna give you the last question for the interview to wrap us up. So if you got one last question, ask JJ.
Oh, I have so many, but I gotta go through exactly which one I think is the best one to end on. Actually, yeah, I feel like this is honestly because we're in Olympic we're in the Olympic break now. The roster freeze has hit. This is more me asking this for my own gratification here. What do you think the United States chances are in the Olympics this year with the way that roster's put together?
That's interesting. I have not really studied the rosters. I obviously know who's on the teams and everything, but I haven't really studied how it might work in a matchup with Canada, let's say. I mean, obviously, U.S. and Canada have the most talented rosters.
Yeah.
But this is not 4 nations. This is there's more teams, and you got to look out for Czechia, for instance. They've got Vamelka and Vladar playing great in net right now.
They are good.
So they could steal some games for them, and they've got high-end talent. Germany doesn't have depth, but they have Drysdale, they have Stutzel, they have some really, and Grubauer in net who's playing really well right now. So these teams were not even given really much of a thought to. Everyone says Sweden, Finland as possibles, and then it's U.S., Canada. Those 4, right? The teams that were in the 4 nations. But there are other teams, and it would have been fun. Obviously, geopolitically can't do it, I guess. But Russia would have made this even more wild because now Russia's probably right there with the U.S. and Canada, and now it would have been even more crazy. But as it is, it's still going to be crazy. Can't wait to watch it. U.S., I think. Billy Guerin, who is a friend of mine, I was with him in the minors, and he's put his neck on the line. If the U.S. struggles to score goals in big games, he's going to hear about it. Cole Caulfield's sitting at home, at least to this point, unless something happened today that changed that because there are guys getting injured and all that. Jason Robertson, all these guys who can really score are kind of being left at home for grinders, guys he thinks will be able to play heavy minutes in these games. We'll see who's right. There's only going to be one GM and one team that feels he was right? Only one that's going to have that gold medal around his neck. So it's going to be fun. Canada is loaded offensively, but their goaltenders, I mean, Jordan Binnington's portrayed as this clutch goalie. And he was clutch for the Blues when they won the Cup. No question about that. He was clutch in the overtime of the deciding game. He wasn't great in that tournament. Let's go back and watch the tournament. He was great in the overtime, robbed Austin Matthews, all that. But he wasn't great. But people remember that because McDavid scores, Canada wins, and he stopped Austin Matthews' remarkable saves there in overtime. He deserves all the kudos he gets for those great saves. But there was a 5-year span from the time Jordan Binnington won the Cup until about 2 years ago where his playoff numbers were dreadful. I mean, really bad. And so I don't know as if he's Mr. Clutch. He has risen to the occasion a couple times in his career, and it has given him this aura that he's Mr. Clutch. If he does it again in these Olympics, I'll be a believer. All right, I'll say that much. But there's still some doubt. I wouldn't be shocked if Logan Thompson is the guy who ends up playing the big games for Canada in net. Because I just think he's had a better year. He's in a better frame of mind going into the tournament. We'll see. But that is a question for Canada. They are a team loaded with, obviously up front, it's just ridiculous. And then they've got some, great players too. But then in net, they are not the top team in the tournament in net. So going to be interesting to see if that brings them down. And then Finland's always tough in these tournaments. Sweden's got a really good team. It's just gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be great hockey.
We're gonna wrap this up. I want to say a big thank you to JJ for joining us again. It's always great talking to you. Great insight. Get it firsthand knowledge. You're a legend an icon. If people haven't called you that, they should.
It only means one thing, Joe, and I've told you this before. It means I'm old. That's all it means.
Well, I say this to James all the time and Austin all the time.
Yep.
I'm only 45, right? So, but when I'm listening to you and watching Flyers games, and I'm listening to the fact that there are sons of players that I watched as a kid now playing in the National Hockey League, I'm like, okay, that's when I know I'm old. Yeah. I'm like, all right, I've seen the second generation. I'm like, that's the official sign.
I've said many times, and I'm calling sons of players. I've called easily calling. I'm calling sons of players getting close to retirement now, or and I call their fathers play. But when that first grandson of a player I've already called, it's time.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We might get close to that. I got a couple of grandkids of some players that are at least to the junior level now. So
wow,
we might not be that far away from it. But I'm blessed to do what I do. Love what I do. Bush is so much fun to work with. Hartsey when he does the games, and Ashlyn and Al just great. And we just try to have fun with the games. It's a lot more fun when they're winning, no doubt about that. But
absolutely.
But even when they're losing, you have to keep it in perspective. This is just hockey. It's not life and death. It's not politics. It's not something that's going to affect someone's life in terms of, or it shouldn't at least affect someone's life in a more serious sense. It's entertainment. So we try to have a little fun with it, and we were having fun last night. Hartsey was on for the win over Washington, so they were talking. Pregame guys were saying pressure's on Bush now. He's got to follow it up with a win because he was back. So he came on to do the On Ice Live segment in the pregame show, and they were saying, the pressure's on. And so he came on and he goes, I am really feeling pressure. And I picked up some, started dabbing his, like he was sweating. And we were just having fun because, you got to have fun.
Absolutely.
But, when the team starts to lose a lot, you also can't have too much fun because then it can be taken the wrong way. So you just have to, but in general, we try to have fun with our broadcasts and just keep it light when we can. But we know Philadelphia is a very serious sports town, and you don't want to make too much fun when things aren't going well. So you have to walk that tightrope. But basically, it's I'm blessed to do what I have done now for 33 years here, and and I look forward to at least a couple more.
Absolutely, and we are too.
And then I'm done.
Yeah, that'll be what we hear. The JJ calling, okay, and that's the grandson, and you just hear the mic drop, and it's like, okay, I'm out.
Just hear the headset come off.
No farewell tour. It'll just be
right.
Call that game, and that'll be it.
Right. Hartsey, it's your turn. You come on in. You and Bush.
Hartsey, you guys play. No, I don't think that's gonna happen. No,
maybe Bush.
Bush might be able to handle play-by-play, but I don't know if he can do it. Play-by-play is a little bit different. It'll be somebody from somewhere else. You're not gonna be somebody like I came from Utica, New York, to basically step in for. I didn't replace. Nobody replaces Gene Hart, but I followed Gene Hart into the booth. No one knew who I was, and there's gonna be some guy who's gonna follow me and replace me, who's not going to be known probably here, but I'm sure they'll do a good job choosing.
Well, we want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for answering all of our questions. We appreciate your time. We're going to let you go because we want you to start to enjoy your vacation.
Yes, it is a break.
Yeah.
I get to take my wife to Florida for about 5 days and then come back and watch the tournament and probably get some, stuff taken care of, taxes, things like that. Because March, there aren't any breaks in March.
No, absolutely.
I can tell you this, JJ. If I took my wife down to Florida right now, she wouldn't want to come back in 5 days. I'll tell you that right now.
It's really cold down there. I'm hoping it warms up in time for us. I think they're finally starting to warm up down there because you don't want to leave here. Yeah. It's 18 here, and you leave there, and you're going, it's 32 in Florida. It's like, no, this is not really what I want. So I think it's warming up. I think we're going to get there, time this just about right. I watched the Super Bowl Sunday, and then we're going to go down next day or two, and then spend 3 or 4 days down there just chilling, and then come back hopefully refreshed and ready to take care of stuff before the team's back on the ice on the 17th, so their break isn't quite as long as it looks when you look at the calendar, because they got like a week to ramp back up. So I'm not sure I'll be at all those practices, but you basically ramp back up, and then away we go. I know, was it 25th? I believe the first game back.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's the 25th.
Look at that schedule. It's just it's just game. So won't be much time to do taxes or anything once we get back to hockey. So I'll try to get it done during the break.
Absolutely.
Once again, thank you for joining us. So we're going to sign off from here. For Austin Hammel, for James Scorza, I'm Joe Marks. That's Jim Jackson, the iconic, legendary, regardless of
only
age.
by the second, Joe.
The ageless wonder, Jim Jackson. That's all for us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks again, JJ. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.